Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into the future of artificial intelligence. Specifically, we're tackling a really fascinating, maybe even provocative question. Why do some top experts, the really respected minds, believe current large language models, LLMs, the ones, why won't they actually get us to human-level AI? And maybe more importantly, what will? Our main source here is an insightful clip from the Big Technology podcast featuring Yann LeCun, who's Meta's chief AI scientist. So our mission today, let's try and cut through some of the incredible hype. Understand the real differences between what AI can do now versus genuine intelligence, and explore the path forward, at least according to one of the biggest voices in the field.
Yeah, LeCun's always interesting to listen to. He brings a very grounded perspective, almost contrarian sometimes, especially with all the grand claims flying around.
Exactly, contrarian. And speaking of which, he makes this a really bold statement right off the bat. It definitely caught my attention. He says, we're not going to get to human-level AI, AGI, just by making LLMs bigger and bigger. He's super definitive about it. What's really driving that conviction, especially when, so many others seem to think scaling is the answer?
Oh, he's incredibly explicit.
Yeah.
He basically says there's absolutely no way, his words, that we'll hit true human-level intelligence in the next, say, 2 years just by scaling LLMs.
Yeah.
He pretty much dismisses this whole idea of having a country of genius in a data center, calls it complete BS.
Yeah.
His core argument boils down to this. Current LLMs, even these massive ones, they function like a gigantic memory and retrieval ability. Think of it like having, a PhD sitting next to you, as he puts it. They can find and synthesize answers to almost anything reasonable you ask.
Right, like a super advanced search engine with a great summarizer built in.
Exactly. But, and this is the crucial bit for him, they aren't a PhD in the true sense. They lack the ability to invent solutions to new problems, especially problems outside their training data. And that, for LeCun, is the real mark of intelligence. Not just retrieving, but inventing.
That distinction, retrieval versus invention, that feels really key. So it makes you wonder then, with all this money, billions pouring into AI, if LLMs aren't the golden ticket to AGI, where's all that investment actually going? Especially from a company like Meta, they've been so public about AI. Is it just keeping the lights on, operationally speaking, or is there a bigger strategy?
Well, a significant chunk of Meta's investment, for example, is going into what they call infrastructure for inference, which, simply put, is just the massive computing power needed to run the AI models in real time, once they're trained.
Yeah.
Handling billions of requests from users across the globe. Their goal is pretty practical, actually. It's to serve 1 billion users of MAI, that's Meta AI, through things like smart glasses, standalone apps.
Okay, so serving the actual end users with the current tech.
Right. And that kind of consumer-facing AI, it needs huge long-term investment in compute, stuff that takes months, even years to build out. LeCun sees it as good investment because, look, even if the next big paradigm shift in AI doesn't happen in, say, 3 years, they'll still need and use that infrastructure heavily. It's almost a necessary operational cost, regardless of what the next AGI breakthrough looks like.
So that covers the consumer side, building the highways for today's AI. But the source also points out a pretty big bottleneck for businesses on the enterprise side. What's stopping companies from really using generative AI for critical stuff beyond just, cool demos?
Yeah, for critical enterprise applications, these LLMs are still seen as deeply flawed. The main problem is that infamous 5% hallucination issue. Imagine you get a 100-page research report from an AI. If 5% of it is just wrong, factually incorrect, and you have no way of knowing which 5% it is, well, that makes it basically unusable for anything critical. Legal, medical, financial reporting, you just can't trust it.
Yeah, the risk is way too high.
Exactly. And the source mentions that maybe only 10% or 20% of these enterprise proof of concepts actually make it into production. Why? Often because they're either too expensive to run reliably or they're just too fallible, too prone to errors. It's that classic last mile problem. It reminds me a lot of the level 5 self-driving cars we heard about.
Ah, right. The ones that looked amazing in controlled demos years ago.
Precisely. Impressive demos 10 years ago, as the source says. They can handle perfect conditions, but getting that final few percent of reliability for a system to be truly practical, safe, deployable in the messy real world, that's incredibly, incredibly hard.
Those challenges, the hallucinations, the deployment issues, it does naturally lead to a bigger question, doesn't it? Especially with all the hype. Are we maybe, just maybe, heading towards another AI winter, where interest, investment, it all cools off dramatically like we've seen before?
It's a really valid concern. And yeah, history does offer some pretty stark warnings. The source brings up the complete failure of IBM Watson. Remember that. Huge investment, massive promises, especially in healthcare.
Oh, yeah, I remember the hype around Watson.
And it was ultimately sold for parts. Why? Because they just couldn't deploy it reliably in real-world clinical settings. It was too difficult. And then there was that big wave of interest in AI back in the 1980s, centered around expert systems.
Right, the idea of programming in rules from human experts.
Exactly. You had knowledge engineers sitting down with experts trying to codify all their expertise into these rigid rule-based systems. There were huge, ambitious projects like Japan's fifth-generation computer project. Massive funding, huge goals. But ultimately, that whole approach was mostly a failure. Interest really died off by the mid-90s. Expert systems only really stuck around for a very narrow set of applications where things were highly constrained. So the difficulty of deploying AI reliably, broadly, LeCun stresses this is not new. It's a recurring theme. And yeah, of course, something like a stock market downturn could definitely pour cold water on things if the current AI doesn't live up to the, frankly, massive expectations. It could be a contributing factor.
Okay, so if just scaling up LLMs isn't the path to true AGI, and we've seen these hype cycles before, what does LeCun actually propose? What are the real fundamental missing pieces he thinks we need for AI that's genuinely like human intelligence?
He pinpoints 4 crucial abilities that he argues LLMs fundamentally lack. These are foundational for true intelligence. First, understanding the physical world, common sense physics, like how a baby just knows an object will fall if you drop it, or that you can't walk through a solid wall. LLMs don't get that intuitively.
Right, they don't have that built-in world model.
Exactly. Second, persistent memory. Not just recalling stuff from training data, but memory that continuously updates and builds based on new real-time experiences like ours does. Third is reasoning. The ability to actually deduce new conclusions logically, especially in novel situations, applying abstract principles. And finally, number 4 is planning. Constructing complex sequences of actions to achieve a goal, especially in an unpredictable, real-world environment. He argues these aren't just extra features. They require totally different kinds of AI systems. Systems that can acquire common sense. Systems that can learn from natural sensors like video, not just text.
Learning from video, that sounds like a big shift.
It is. And the good news, he says, is that his group at Meta, also DeepMind, others too, they're making progress on this. They're working on systems that can be trained to understand how the world works on video, and systems that can use mental models to plan sequences of actions. He mentions there are early results already showing these kinds of capabilities.
Okay, that's a fundamentally different approach. So what's the timeline look like for these kinds of foundational breakthroughs, and how does he see it happening? Is it going to be one big aha moment?
He suggests it's probably not within the next 3 years, but it may happen, between 3 to 5 years. So medium term, perhaps. But, and he really stresses this point, it will not be one secret magic bullet. There won't be some sudden dramatic AGI button moment where everything changes overnight. Instead, he sees it being gradual and open, a process of continuous conceptual ideas being developed and shared by the entire research community across the world. He actually argues that researchers who share their work will move faster than the ones that don't.
Interesting. So collaboration is key, not secrecy.
Absolutely. He explicitly warns against, investing $5 billion in some startup claiming they've secretly cracked AGI in isolation. He believes the real leap will come from this open, collaborative, incremental effort.
That focus on open research is definitely a counterpoint to some narratives out there. But just before we wrap up, it's important to circle back, right? While LeCun thinks LLMs are a dead end for AGI, we shouldn't forget their immense utility right now for things like sophisticated information retrieval or acting as internal experts in companies like Meta's own MetaMate tool. They're still incredibly powerful for specific tasks today.
Oh, absolutely. Their current usefulness for many, many practical applications is undeniable. They are powerful tools. The distinction LeCun's making is purely about their limitations in reaching that higher bar of human-level general intelligence.
Right. So let's leave our listeners with this. What stands out to you from our deep dive today? As you navigate this exciting, sometimes, let's be honest, confusing world of AI, how might thinking about these missing pieces? LeCun talks about common sense, memory, reasoning, planning. How might that reshape your own understanding? Your understanding of what real intelligence means, and maybe what we should realistically expect from the next generation of AI.